آمد بهار ای عاشقان، سوی دیار او کنیم. آنچه بگوید آن کنیم، جان را فدای او کنیم. Spring has come. O lovers, let's go to his land. What he says, let's do. Our lives in his hand. By Maulana Rumi. Beloved Avatar, Meher Baba ki Jai, Jai Meher Baba, everybody. Thank you for coming and bringing your light and love with you. ممنونیم تشریف آوردید و نور و صفا رو با خودتون آوردید. My name is Mehnaz. Welcome to MeherSepas Persian New Year celebration with Peter Nordeen. Today, Peter will be presenting on the spiritual preparation in Iran during the 19th century for the advent of God in human form.
Nowruz Mubarak, everyone. Good to be with you. Today we'll take this opportunity to have a deep look at the great spiritual significance of Iran and the countries that surround Iran. It goes way back in our recorded history. We can go as far back as Noah, who was over 12,000 years ago. The first of the recorded avatars in our history is Zoroaster. According to Baba, Zoroaster was also over 10,000 years ago. And Baba had an interesting comment about Zoroaster. He said that his master was a Jew. They weren't known as Jews then, but we can say they came to be known as Semitic people. That whole spiritual heritage of the Abrahamic religions is so old that it goes back over 10,000 years ago. The American psychic is known as the sleeping prophet, Edgar Cayce, who Baba said was authentic. In one of his readings, he explained that Zoroaster was also over 10,000 years before our time. And he gave the exact place in Iran where Zoroaster was born and lived. Shushtar, which is now, I believe, known as Shusht in southwestern Iran, is where Zoroaster lived. Through the centuries, we know the history of the development of religions that happened after all these great masters came, lived their lives of inspiration to people. In this coming modern age, I believe that all of these past advents led up to a formation for the conditions for this very important, most important advent of the Avatar. So we'll start looking at the history of that area at the end of the 18th century. In the 1790s in Iraq, a man known as Sheikh Mohammed began a religious school of thought within Shia Islam. I don't say religious school of thought is what academics say, but we say these are people with mystical tendencies. We might refer to them as Sufis, but they're not Sufis in the more organized sense. They're mystical people. His followers were expecting the imminent return of divine guidance through the appearance of the Mahdi, the hidden Imam, or a deputy of the hidden Imam. He took a less literalist approach to Islamic teachings. For example, teaching that the material body of Muhammad did not ascend to heaven, and that the expected resurrection of the dead was spiritual allegory. Of course, Sheikh Ahmad came into conflict with the Orthodox Shia theologians of the time and was denounced as an infidel in 1824, and he died 2 years later. Sayyid Ali Muhammad was born in Shiraz in 1819 to a family of Husainid lineage, you know, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, who was killed as a martyr in battle. Most of his family were engaged in mercantile activities in Shiraz. When he was young, he attended a primary school for 6 or 7 years. But in contrast to the formal Orthodox theology which dominated the school curriculum at the time, Ali felt inclined towards unconventional subjects like mathematics and calligraphy, which were not studied that much. His preoccupation with spirituality, creativity, and imagination also angered his teachers and was not tolerated in the 19th century Persian school system. As a teenager, he joined his uncle in the family business in Bushehr. As a merchant, he was renowned for his honesty and trustworthiness, but he preferred the study of religious literature. In 1841, Ali Muhammad went on pilgrimage to Iraq and stayed for 7 months, mostly in and around Karbala, where he attended lectures of Kazim Rushdie, who had succeeded Sheikh Ahmed after his death. Rushdie placed emphasis on the year 1260, Islamic calendar, or 1844. About 1,000 years, lunar years, after the 12th Imam went to, the word is occultation, which means stayed hidden on the inner planes, not manifesting to the world. That's the term they use. Before his death in December of 1843, Kazim Rushdie counseled his followers to leave their homes to seek the Mahdi, who, according to his prophecies, would soon appear. After keeping vigil for 40 days in a mosque, one of these followers traveled to Shiraz, where he met Syed Ali Muhammad, who was 24 years old at the time. Ali Muhammad's first spiritual experience, claimed and witnessed by his wife, is dated to about the evening of the 3rd of April, 1844. After that, he began to referring to himself by the traditional Muslim title, the Bab, which means the gate, the gateway. And although it was apparent that he intended a spiritual claim very different from the traditional Islamic title Bab, which referred to the intermediary, to the Imam, he proclaimed that the central purpose of his mission was to prepare for the coming of the spiritual luminary greater than himself, the promised one of the world's great religions. He referred to this promised Redeemer as he whom God will make manifest. The Bab was the gateway to this messianic figure whose message would be carried throughout the world. The Bab's first public connection with his life's mission came with the arrival of Mullah Hussein from Iraq. One night, Mullah Hussein was invited by the Bab to his home, where Mullah Hussein told him of his search for the possible successor to Kazim Rushdie, the promised one. The Bab explained that he had invited him for that reason, to reveal that he was the bearer of divine knowledge. The Bab replied satisfactorily to all of Mullah Hussein's questions and had written in his presence with extreme rapidity a long tafsir, a commentary on Surah Yusuf, which is considered the Bab's first revealed work. Mullah Hussein became the first to accept the Bab's claim to be an inspired figure and a likely successor to Kazim Rushdie. Meher Baba did state that the Bab was a kutub. Sources common describe the Bab as gentle with great intelligence. One of his contemporary followers described him as very taciturn. He would never utter a word unless it was absolutely necessary. He did not even answer our questions. He was constantly absorbed in his own thoughts, it seemed, and was preoccupied with repetition of his prayers and verses. He is described as a handsome man with a thin beard, dressed in clean clothes, wearing a green shawl and black turban. An Irish physician described him as a very mild and delicate-looking man, rather small in stature and very fair, with a melodious, soft voice, which struck me much. Within 5 months after Mullah Hussein became the Bab's first disciple, 17 other disciples of Kazim Rushdie recognized the Bab as a manifestation of God. These 18 disciples later became known as the Letters of the Living, each of them containing one letter of the Spirit of God, which combined to form the Word. They were given the task of spreading the new faith, which was understood as a return or continuation of the one faith of Abraham across Iran and Iraq. After the 18 letters of the living recognized him, the Bab and his main disciple left on pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina, the sacred sites. At the Kaaba in Mecca, the Bab publicly claimed to be the Qaim and wrote to the Sharif of Mecca, the custodian of the Kaaba, proclaiming his mission. Hearing reports, the governor summoned the Bab to Shiraz in 1845, tortured one of his disciples. On October 15, the Bab had a confrontation with the Islamic clergy there. But he denied that he was a representative of the hidden imam or an intermediary of the faithful, and wrote a statement renouncing the claims to the position of Babaya. This renunciation saved him from immediate execution. His work was not completed. His tone, conduct, and calm demeanor before a partly hostile audience impressed many of those in attendance and encouraged others in Shiraz to inquire further about him. So many of them became his followers. The Bab's intention in denying that he was a representative or an intermediary of the hidden imam, now sometimes assumed to be an imaginary figure believed to have entered occultation in the 9th century, seems to be rejecting superstitions associated with that figure. The Bab also hinted that his station was far greater than that of an imam or its representative. Later, he laid full claim to be a manifestation of God and explained that earlier in his ministry, out of compassion, he deliberately veiled his true identity to ensure his message could be gradually understood by the masses. The Bab was placed under house arrest at the home of his uncle, but after a cholera epidemic broke out in Shiraz, he was released and went to Isfahan. There, many people came to see him. After an informal gathering where the Bab debated local clergy and displayed his speed in producing instantaneous verses, his popularity soared. He had the trait, like HAFEZ, to be able to spontaneously create verses. After the death of the empathetic governor of Isfahan, though, pressure from the clergy there of the province led the new governor to expel the Bab to Tehran. And after several months in confinement, before the Bab could meet the Shah, the prime minister sent the Bab to Tabriz in the northwest corner to be confined. There was a habit of them sending these controversial religious figures to the outskirts of the country so they wouldn't cause trouble within the heart of the country. In the early months of his public declarations, the adoption of a cautious policy had essentially achieved maximum attention with minimum controversy. The incarceration of the Bab in Maku marked a pivotal moment in his life and mission. During his 9 months of imprisonment, he openly declared his station as the promised Qayyim, the hidden Imam, and abrogated the social laws of Islam. The Bab explained that earlier in his ministry, out of compassion, he had adhered to the Quranic laws to ease the transition for people and avoid unsettling them with new revelation. He deliberately veiled his true identity to ensure his message could be gradually understood by the masses. And even his title, Bab, was chosen to moderate the impact of his claim as a manifestation of God. In June of 1848, the Bab was brought back to Tabriz to face trial for apostasy in front of a large group of Islamic clergymen there. At the trial, attended by the crown prince, the mullahs questioned the Bab about the nature of his claims and his teachings, and demanded that he produce miracles to prove his divine authority. They admonished him to recant his claims. Only one answer is found in all 9 eyewitness sources, where the Bab states, "I am that person you have been awaiting for 1,000 years." So the trial did not bring a decisive result. Some clergy called for capital punishment, but the government pressured them to issue a lenient judgment because the Bab was so popular. The government asked medical experts to declare the Bab insane to prevent his execution. It is also likely that, as a face-saving measure, and to appease the religious clergy, the government may have spread rumors that the Bab actually did recant. Regardless, a fatwa was issued establishing the Bab's apostasy and stated the repentance of an incorrigible apostate is not accepted. The only thing which has caused the postponement of execution is a doubt as to the insanity of the mind. The Crown Prince's physician examined the Bab and complied with the government's request to find grounds for clemency. The physician's opinion saved the Bab from execution for a time, but the clergy insisted that he, at the least, face corporal punishment instead. So the Bab suffered a foot whipping, 20 severe lashes to the bottoms of his feet. In mid-1850, a new prime minister ordered the execution of the Bab, probably because the movement's popularity appeared to be waning due to the defeat of various Babi insurrections, which were reactions to persecution from the Orthodox religious leaders. The Bab was brought back to Tabriz for an execution by firing squad. The night before his execution, while being conducted to his cell, a young follower begged for martyrdom with him, so he was immediately arrested and also placed in the same cell as the Bab. On the morning of the 9th of July, 1850, the Bab was taken to the courtyard of the barracks where he was imprisoned. Thousands of people gathered to watch his execution. The Bab and his follower were suspended on a wall, and a firing squad of hundreds of soldiers prepared to shoot. Numerous eyewitness reports, including those of Western diplomats, recount the result. The order was given to fire. Accounts differ on the details, but all agree that the first volley failed to kill the Babs. The bullets had instead cut the rope that suspended them from the wall. Another account claims that the two were missing when the smoke cleared, and after a long search, they were found back in their cell conversing. It was only after the Bab told the guards, "All right, we are finished. You may take us now," that they were all led back out to be executed. So a second firing squad was brought in and a second order to fire given. And this time the Bab was killed. He was only 30 years old. His life had a great impact. The teachings of the Bab offered new interpretations of the notions of God, religion, and prophets, heaven, hell, and resurrection accordingly in the world of Shia Islam. Progressive revelation, continuity, and renewal of religion, modernizing education, improving the status of women, abolishing the priesthood, and emphasizing ethics, independent investigation of truth, and human nobility are among the key teachings of the Bab. Sounds familiar? Another fundamental focus of his teachings is his emphasis on the advent of a messianic figure whom he frequently refers to as he whom God shall make manifest. The Bab consistently discusses his own revelation and work in the context of this promised figure. Unlike previous religions where reference to promised figures were only occasionally hinted at, the main focus of the Bayan, the Bab's most important writing, is preparing the way for the one even greater than himself, that the Bab refers to as he whom God shall make manifest. The Bab describes this messianic figure as the origin of all divine attributes and states that his command is equivalent to God's command. He asks his followers to independently investigate and look for the promised one and recognize him out of his own intrinsic reality, works, and attributes, and not due to any reasons external to him. To get past tradition, to get past orthodox teaching. Two of the early followers of the Bab were Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri and his younger half-brother, Mirza Yahya Nuri. Though he was only 19 years old at the time, before his execution, the Bab declared that Mirza Yahya was his successor or spiritual chargeman, who was responsible for guiding the followers at the age of 19. The Bab had honored Mirza with some fine appellations, different names, but he eventually assumed the name Sub-e-Azal. The execution of the Bab only aggravated the tension between his followers and their antagonists. In August of 1852, a few Babis made a failed attempt to assassinate the Shah, who responded by ordering the killing and in some cases torturing about 50 Babis in Tehran. Further bloodshed spread throughout the country, and tens of thousands were killed by the end of that year. Though he was not involved in the assassination attempt, Sub's elder brother Mirza Hussein Ali was also imprisoned in Tehran until his release was arranged 4 months later by the Russian ambassador to Iran. Shortly thereafter, he was expelled from Iran and traveled to Baghdad in the Ottoman Empire. Now remember, Iran was in the Khazar Empire, and the Ottoman Empire was in Iraq and Turkey. So it was sent to the Ottoman Empire, where many of the other Babis had taken refuge, including Subhi Azal, his younger half-brother. Subhi Azal's leadership was controversial. He generally absented himself from the Babi community, spending his time in Baghdad in seclusion and disguise. Subhi Azal, this was taken as cowardice by some of the more outward followers. Subhi Azal gradually alienated himself from many of them, who started to give their allegiance to other claimants of successorship from the Bab. It's a typical human trait. Some scholars have accused Sub of incompetence and cowardice, but some attribute this isolation to the Shia practice of taqiyya, doing the practical safe thing. His half-brother Mirza Hussein Ali was outgoing, 14 years older, the senior brother, and was now known by the name Baha'u'llah. Many of the Babis, looking for a leader who was more public and available, turned to Baha'u'llah, the older brother. In Baghdad, his leadership revived the persecuted followers of the Bab in Iran. So Iranian authorities requested the removal of most of the Babis, which instigated a summons to Constantinople, now Istanbul, from the Ottoman Sultan. In 1863, at that time of his removal from Baghdad, Baha'u'llah first announced his claim of prophethood to his family and followers, which he said came to him 10 years earlier when he was in that dungeon in Tehran. He had some spiritual awakening then. From the time of the initial exile from Iran, tensions had grown between him and Subhi Azal, who did not recognize Baha'u'llah's claim to be the prophet. After receiving chastising letters from Baha'u'llah, Ottoman authorities in Istanbul turned against Sub within a few months and put him under house arrest in Adrianople. Now it's known as Edirne, which is the furthest most boundary of the Ottoman Empire, right on the border with Greece and Bulgaria. The group of Babis with the brothers was also exiled to Edirne. Baha'u'llah's claim to be the messianic figure of the Bayan became a public proclamation there. This created a permanent schism between the two brothers. So Subhi Azal responded to these claims by reiterating his succession to the Bab and resisting the changes of doctrine that were introduced by Baha'u'llah. At one point during their 5 years in Edirne, Sub and his followers were accused of trying to poison Baha'u'llah. Subhi Azal and an advocate of his then made accusations against Baha'u'llah to the Ottoman authorities, which resulted in both factions being further exiled in 1868. The Ottomans were fed up with both of them. Baha'u'llah's group was sent to Akka in Palestine, and Subhi Azal's smaller group to Famagusta in Cyprus. Throughout the rest of his life, Baha'u'llah gained the allegiance of almost all of the Babis, who came to be known as Baha'is, while the remnant of the Baha'is became known as Azalis and are regarded by Baha'is as infidels, apostates, heretics. It was in or near the Ottoman penal colony of Akka in Palestine that Baha'u'llah spent the remainder of his life. After initially strict and harsh confinement, he was allowed to live in a home near Akka while still officially a prisoner of that city. He died there in 1892. Baha'is regard his resting place at Baji as the Qibla to which they turn to prayer each day. The formal exile of Subh Izal ended in 1881 when Cyprus was acquired by Britain in the aftermath of the Russo-Turkish War, 1877, 1888, but 1878. He remained on the island for the rest of his life until his death in 1912. The photograph you see of him here was taken around 1910. He remained elusive and secretive, living off a British pension and being perceived as a Muslim holy man there by the people of Cyprus. There, he associated with Sufis and left no formal successor. Meher Baba revealed that Baha'u'llah was on the fifth plane, but that Subh Izal was on the sixth plane, and he was the authentic spiritual chargeman of the Bab. Baha'u'llah named his eldest son, Abdul Baha, as his successor, but it's traditional. However, Baba said that Abdul Baha was spiritually inclined, though he was not spiritually advanced. Baha'u'llah was interested in propagating the Baha'i faith, with himself as the expected one. Subh Izal was interested in maintaining the teachings of the Bab. What's fascinating to me is that these two brothers, both of the mental world, developed such animosity towards each other. What was that about? Though they were both highly advanced, their fate seems to have been the working out of some karmic remnant of the advent of Islam, which had to be done before the avatar of the age was unveiled by Hazrat Babajan in 1914. On March 21st, 1853, a boy named Shahryar was born in a town near Yazd. Shahryar's father, Mundagar, was a spiritually inclined man who was a devotee of a Muslim wali there. So though he was a Zoroastrian, he was more like a Sufi, who was the keeper of the Tower of Silence. Shahryar was also deeply spiritually inclined and left home wandering in search of God at the age of 12. You know the story of him traveling through the different countries, the desert, doing Chichila, Nashini, his experiences, where he eventually came to Pune. He had the vision that told him, through your son, you will achieve what you seek. Shahryar's sister was living in Pune and somehow became obsessed with getting him married. He wasn't interested. She pestered him. And one day, in exasperation, he said, all right, if I have to be married, I can only marry the one I say. Do you agree? She said, yes, if you're willing. He said, okay, I'll marry that girl. She said, very convenient. She's the daughter of my best friend. It happened. This photograph was taken of Shariarji in Pune during the 1880s sometime. Another interesting person that Meher Baba declared was of the mental planes was born in Baghdad around 1830. He was the one we know as Gilori Shah, whose tomb shrine is at Meherabad. He may have been in Baghdad when the followers of the Bab came there in 1853. As a young man, he began working on merchant vessels sailing the Arabian Sea and that part of the world. No doubt, because of his excellence, he eventually came to be a butler in the service of the royal household of Queen Victoria of the British Empire. He was among the staff accompanying the Prince of Wales on his tour of India in 1875. At some point in his life, he traveled to the mountains in central India, where he was taught to practice pranayama by a Hindu master there. When Gilori Shah retired from the Queen's service, he was given a bag of gold, we hear, treasure of some type, as a pension in appreciation for his service. He returned to India and apparently, as he said, threw the bag of treasure into the Narmada River somewhere. He came to settle in Ahmednagar, awaiting the arrival of he whom God shall make manifest. Now, this photograph, taken just before the turn of the century, shows him seated on the right. There are other notable people in this photograph. This is an image of a grand opening of a supply depot for a man named B.J. Irani. He is the older man sitting to the left with the mustache. The man with his elbow on B.J. Irani's shoulder there is Kaikushru, the father of Adike Irani. The man standing behind the English gentleman with the round cap on is another Kaikushru who married the sister of the other Kaikushru. So they were brothers-in-law. He was also the cousin of B.J. Irani. He also came from Iran when he left Iran when he was 9 years old, and he came to be in Ahmednagar. Now, the figure on the right, we are quite sure is Gilori Shah. For years, we looked for a photograph of him. There's a long story. I could tell you all about this and all the different stories, fascinating about Gilori Shah. But I won't go into that. We'll look at the close-up of him now. One of the reasons we are quite sure that this is Gilori Shah is that you see what's called the Vaishnavite tilak on his forehead. That is a thing that Hindus do. Muslims would never do that. It's an honor to his guru, at least, master guru, in central India. Much like many other highly advanced people in India, they are a mix of Muslim and Hindu. Sai Baba, Kabir, Gilori Shah was such. This is one of the main clues that tell us this is Gilori Shah. He also, in that other photograph, is obviously an honored personality. Why would this Muslim fakir be an honored personality? Because he was a retired servant in the household of Queen Victoria. He was a celebrity in that sense to the English people there. So this is the only photo. David Fenster found this. He's quite a detective. He finds so many things. When he found it, he sent it to me and said, "What do you think of this?" I told him, "We've been looking for this for years." The only one we know that shows Gilori Shah. I've showed it to many other people who are qualified to make the judgment, and the comment was, who else could it be? Now, probably sometime in the 1850s, a boy named Behram was born in Kerman, in the south part of Iran. As he grew up, he became a very skillful wood artisan. Being an expert carpenter, craftsman, Behram was employed by Nasr al-Din Shah of the Qajar dynasty, who was the same one responsible, by the way, for the execution of the Bab. Behram was in charge of the construction of a colossal door to one of the palaces of the king in Tehran. His exquisite art and workmanship was very much appreciated by the Shah, who wanted to reward him for it. But on the eve of the recognition of his services, he came to know of a disturbing incident, the unjust impeachment and imprisonment of the prime minister by the Shah. The prime minister wanted progressive improvements for the people, and the Shah became more intransigent and conservative as the years went by. This affected his keen sense of equity, and he decided to leave the country, ignoring the expected good reward from the king. So he left the next day. Shortly after arrival in India, Behram was married. The youngest of their 5 children were Gul and Suna, 2 of Meher Baba's closest women disciples. When Suna first visited the home of Baba's parents in Pune, Shireen Mai's mother was there. They got to speaking to each other in Dari. Golandun was curious. Where did your family come from? What's your father's name? His name is this. He's a carpenter. He did. That's your father? He's my cousin. So through that, we came to know that these 2 and Baba's mother were probably second cousins. Interesting connection again. Another Zoroastrian man who was born in Persia, probably in the 1840s, was Sorosh Shiavox Ganji, who came to Bombay and was involved in very successful businesses there. But he had disputes with his partners because he was too generous. He would give to the poor, keep bread in his pockets to give to poor, give them money. His partners were also mostly people who had come from Iran, but they thought he was ruining the business. Now, Adi told the story that he got fed up. His partners also didn't like him for being too generous. So he left the business, stayed in Bombay. The business began to collapse. So they begged him to come back, which he did, and the business began to flourish again. But he was disgusted with their attitude and left. He and his family came to Pune. In Pune, he got involved with a family there who eventually stationed him in Ahmednagar to be the caretaker of the Zoroastrian Agyari there. So sometime in the 1880s, he was sent to Ahmednagar. Oh, by the way, when he was in Pune, he had to be in contact with Sheriarji, who had by that time settled in Pune. So they knew each other there. Sheriarji was also somehow related to Behram, the carpenter's family. This photograph we're seeing now is Sarosh Ganji again, taken sometime around 1890 after they had come to stay in Ahmednagar. In 1896, Kaikushu married Gul. Kaikushu, that son, with Sarosh, which you saw in the picture, married Gul, the daughter of Behram. Gul was 14. Kaikushru was 18. They didn't live with each other for 3 or 4 years, but stayed with their respective families until they established a household. In Ahmednagar, Sarosh Ganji came to know Bapu Saheb, who was, as Baba explained, a Salik Majzub, perfect one. In Ahmednagar. Interesting personality, habits, but he was highly respected in Ahmednagar. In 1903, Sarosh Ganji died. Bapu Saheb came to the house, came to the door. And when the door was entered, he said, "Give me the clothes of my disciple." People were surprised. His disciple? So you see how Sarosh Ganji was spiritually inclined. He was a very good man who was spiritually inclined. Now, let's go back to the previous photograph. I want to show you something here. You see Gulmai in this wedding photograph, apparently wedding photograph, taken in December 1896. Gulmai explained that after the wedding ceremony, her father-in-law, Sarosh, took her by the hand and led her to a special guest who had come from Pune, Shariarji, and told her, "This is Shariarji. You bow down and touch his feet." So he knew the importance of Shariarji. You can see from that experience. Now let's go to number 8 again. I just going to give you a little bit of the history. These are the two sisters again. It just happened that Suna, Gul, and Kaikushu, Gul's husband, his sister was Gulnar, married another Kaikushu, the elder. So now you have all of these Kaikushus and Guls, and now you're totally confused. This is one reason why Baba gave so many people nicknames. I'm mentioning the first Sarosh, who was the cousin of B.J. Irani. B.J. Irani is important. Why? He was the grandfather of Goher and Katie. And in that photograph, I failed to show you that the little girl sitting in front was Goher and Katie's mother. Right there, that little girl in the front is Goher and Katie's mother. So Suna married a man named Kaikushru. He was a jeweler in Bombay. Gulmai married a man named Kaikushu. He became Kanseb Kaikushu. We know him as Kanseb Kaikushu. And Kaikushu's sister Gulnar married Elder Kaikushu. They are the parents of our Mandali man Sarosh. Sarosh, our Mandali Sarosh, was the grandson and named for his grandfather Sarosh Ganji. His father was adamantly opposed to Baba his whole life. Kanseb liked Baba, and Kanseb and Gulmai gave Baba the property for Meherabad, as you recall. But Kanseb came to really love Baba. Kaikushu Masa, the husband of Suna by that point, though, was absolutely spiritually focused person. He had done so much work for Baba in his short time. The early Mandali had great love and respect for him, so much so that in 2019, when we had the 75th anniversary for the dedication of the memorial tower at Meherabad, after that, I wanted people to be aware of some of the early personalities whose names are on the tower. And the first name I wanted to do was Kaikushu Masa. So we did a video about his life and the great service and sacrifice for Baba that his life represented. He died in 1931, early in 1931. It's a very poignant, beautiful story. That's on Meher Filmworks. Now, Sunamasi and Kaikushu Masa had one child. Her name was Khorshid. We knew her very well. She was one of the close early women Mandali. She came to be Baba's disciple at the age of 12. This photograph shows her around the age of 8. Now, a fascinating connection here is this. Baba said that she was Queen Victoria, reincarnated. And isn't it interesting that Gilori Shah came to Ahmednagar, established the rest of his life there, and had this very close connection with the family. Gulmai, he was also typical, like Subiazal, Gilori Shah was a bit reclusive. He didn't associate with a lot of people, but he was very close to Gulmai and Kaikushu's family. All of these people, it's no accident, they all have a tremendous deep past connection with these advanced persons who show up from time to time. Gulmai used to send Gilori Shah his meal every day, and it was his insistence. He was the instigator of Meherabad. It was his insistence that he should be given a small, as he put it, now I'm old, I just need a small piece of property, just enough to lie down. I need a piece. Please give me that out there. At the time, Meherabad was a desolate ruins. Gilori Shah dropped his body in January of 1924. But I wanted to explain that connection, Gilori Shah working for Queen Victoria, and now she's come back here. There are other fascinating things said, explained by Upasni Maharaj and Baba about this. We're not going to get into that today. Before ever traveling to other places outside of the Indian subcontinent, Meher Baba made 3 trips to Iran. The first in 1924. He was only there a short time. As he explained, he was there to begin the trend of progress for Iran. He visited again in 1929, and then one time in 1931. I'm not going to go into these trips because Farhad will do I'm sure, a long presentation on all of this history. I don't need to do that, but there's one thing I wanted to touch on. That is, in 1929, Baba spent about 6 weeks traveling through Iran. He stayed hidden from the public until he and the men with him arrived in Yezd. In Yezd, 4 darshan programs were arranged, and many people came to see Baba and pay homage to him. During those days in Yezd, a leader of the Baha'i faith came, especially from Shiraz, by airplane to challenge Meher Baba with questions. Since Baha'u'llah had told his followers if anyone comes after me and declares they are the one, they are a charlatan. The Baha'i still have this attitude. Baha'i people have that attitude that only Baha'u'llah was the prophet. So he came with the express purpose of exposing Baba as a charlatan. But as would happen, when many people saw Meher Baba, the man forgot everything he planned to ask. And he declared, "You are God himself." He bowed down and stretched himself on the floor, prostrated himself at Baba's feet and wept. And after coming out of Baba's room, he exclaimed to people, "Today I have met God." Iran is made, really made for Meher Baba. So much of that Zoroastrian heritage is still there. During the East-West Gathering in 1962, more than once, I believe, but Baba made a comment like this. There were 5,000-6,000 people there. Baba said, "You all are here, thousands, but really speaking," he said, "this is a family gathering. You've come, few of you from around the world," he said, "but wait until the Iranis get whiff of me. They won't have passports and visas. They will storm the border." And you know Baba's comments about his manifestation in Mashhad, his seclusion work there. But Iran really was made for Meher Baba. When the time is right, it will happen. In the meantime, the whole world is in the grips of a spiritual catharsis, especially America, India also, and Iran. All of these things have to come up. All of these problems have to be manifested. Sanskaras have to be spent. Falseness has to be loud. It's happening now. Eventually, all of this Maya, this noise, will cancel itself out. The truth is always there silently behind, calmly, still. Well, that gives us an idea, somewhat of an idea. I wanted to give you, many of you may know the history of what happened in the 19th century in Iran, but it's a fascinating history in view of Meher Baba's comments. That's what's fascinating to me. I asked Erich about this early in the 70s, and this is what he explained to me. Not all of this history, he told me what Baba had said about it. And so the history is most fascinating to us because of Baba's comments. Now, if you have any questions and answers, let's move to that.
Thank you so much, Peter. It was most profound presentation. And what you say about the awakening in Iran, actually, recently I was talking to one of Baba's dearest, and he spent about 4 or 5 months in Iran. And he said the people's reaction, he traveled to Shiraz and different parts of Iran, and people could not get enough of Meher Baba. He spoke, and people flocked to him. They were ready to receive his love. And this, he said, this is unprecedented. Never he has seen such gravitations towards the avatar. And this is a Muslim country, you know, it's majority they're Muslims. And no matter what, they're listening and they're getting Baba's love to them. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I wanted you to repeat what you said about Baba's statements about Iran
Yes.
and anything in addition that you can think of.
Well, you know, your friend Khalid was there at the East-West gathering. I'm not sure he was present when Baba made that statement, though. So Baba generally just said, you see 5,000-6,000 people here, but really this is only a family gathering of my lovers. In the future, there will be a great change. When the people of Iran get whiff of me, you all have had to do all of these things to travel from outside of India. When the people of Iran get whiff of me, he said, they won't have passports and visas. They will just storm the border and come. The rest, I mean, so many comments that have been made. You've got to have more of that information than probably most anyone, I'm sure. But that was just, to me, always a very fascinating comment that Bob had made. And I always felt, because of the deep spiritual heritage of Iran and some of the surrounding countries, but, you know, we see Baba lovers coming from Iran, probably the largest group of a country outside of India. We have people in Argentina, but we have a lot of people from Iran. We have people from China. We don't see people from a lot of other places coming to Meherabad. Those countries, a handful here and there. Otherwise, America is a different issue. Baba put a lot of focus here, and it's, as you know, it's a different issue. But yes, the great spiritual heritage, undeniable.
Thank you.
Hey, Baba. Thanks again, Peter. You're one of my heroes, but I have one question, very simple. I always get confused about Golme and Golnar and their children.
Right. Gee, I think we've done the family tree, but if we haven't, we sure have to do it. I'll spend a few minutes explaining that again. Besides the fact that they're all related, I was speaking to Bao about this once, you know. This one, and this one said they're related to that one, and, you know, we're talking about Iranis, and Bao's comment was simply, they're all related. Connections. Sorosh Ganji had 2 children, Kekushru, a son, daughter Gulnar. Okay. Behram, we talked about, the carpenter, he had 5 children. An older daughter, 2 sons, and 2 younger daughters. The 2 younger daughters became the close disciples of Baba. We know them as Gulmai and Sunamasi. Here's an interesting fact. One of the brothers had a son named Asthma, who was one of Baba's early disciples. And when they had finished the trip across the desert in Gujarat, Baba sent Asthma home and told him, go home, please your parents, do what your father tells you. I'm always with you. Don't talk about me. And he obeyed Baba and lived his life like that. After Baba dropped his body, Bao had been given that order to write the biography, and he traveled all around trying to contact people who had any information. He went to Bombay, and under the guise of a student studying Zoroaster's life, came to the house of Asma because he had heard he was there to tell his wife that he was a student and he wanted to interview them. She was so very happy. And of course, he knew that since this person had been invited through the door, would you like anything? Can I make a cup of tea? Oh, yes, that would be very nice. She went into the kitchen to make a cup of tea. That's when Bao told him, I'm from Meherabad. How is he? He dropped his body. He's gone. And he just wept. But he told him the whole story of that early life and how Baba sent him away. Never forgot Baba, never had a picture, never talked. What a thing. Connections. There was another brother who was a doctor. His name was Minusher Shah, I think, Minusher Shah. He was also adamantly opposed to Baba, like our Sarosha's Kaikushu elder. And the two of them together started this gossip when Baba came for the wedding of Rustam and Freni to Ahmednagar in 1923. And they were staying in the Kush Recorder's compound. Many of the other extended family were staying there. And Gulmai's brother and Kaikushu elder Sarosha's father started this gossip. And that's when Baba suddenly got up and walked away. Had never been there before, but suddenly went to Arangaon, to the camp, the old camp there, which became Meherabad, sat there and said, oh, this is a beautiful place. And the Mandali said, it's beautiful. It's a shambles here. There's nothing. And Baba said, no, this would be a good place for us. That's how Meherabad happened. Opposition is so very important. As Baba would tell Sarosh, don't worry about your father. He's got a good heart. If he doesn't give us opposition, I'll have to make it some other way. So it's like that. So, but there are more Kaikushus. But it just goes on and on. Rao Sahib of Sari was Kaikushu. So Baba gave him the nickname Rao Sahib. Any other ones? It's a common name with the Zoroastrians.
Jai Baba, Peter, it's good
Hello,
to,
Farshid.
yeah, good to see you and good to hear your voice.
I don't see you, but it's good to hear you.
I just wanted to see if you can maybe share with us the story of Baba going to Mashhad and all the things that he did there, and after that, if you could, briefly scan through those. Yeah.
But you know that in 1931, Baba went there to have seclusion in that mosque at the 8th Imam, was it? In Mashhad. So that was done. That whole story of how that happened is quite remarkable. And later on in 1941, Baba gave out a circular. And in that circular, one of the points he stated was, the tree of my divine manifestation has been planted in Mashhad, Iran, from where it will flourish, grow and flourish to cover the whole world. Whatever that means, it's quite a remarkable statement. That's all I'm going to say about that trip.
I just want to thank Peter for talking about Bob, because hardly anybody knows about him, but he has played such an important role in preparing for Baba's advent. And through his disciples clashing with each other, burning some of the difficulties, just like Upasani Maharaj, did his part to remove obstacles. But among Baba people, I think you're the only one I have heard who has talked about or knows anything about Bob. And, I asked Erich long ago if Baba had said anything. And he basically said that what he remembered was Baba making a statement that Bob was an authentic master.
Yes.
So
He was
now people have heard it twice from two different
Yes.
sources.
Well, I heard it from Erich also that, but the interesting thing, because I had a conversation with Erich about the faith, Baha'i, and how it all happened, history of Iran and all those things. Remember in the 70s, we would sit in the hall and have conversations. It was a topic of conversation. That's when he made that point, because I asked about Baha'u'llah claiming, because here we are, young people coming, we hear these things. Baha'u'llah claimed, and how do you make that out? What was it? Eric said, yes, Baba said he was on the fifth plane. He said, but what's interesting, he said that Subi Azal, his brother, who is the real chargeman, was actually on the sixth plane. And people treat him like a heretic. I've never heard of followers of Subi Azal except for Bill LePage's sister. Bill LePage's sister was a follower of Subi Azal.
So was my grandfather.
There you go. What a rare thing. Rare thing. So that we have those links there. We have those links. Yes. That illustration, there was one original illustration that was done during the life of Bob, only one. There were no photographs. There was one illustration, and it wasn't very good, but the one I used was a redone illustration by somebody early in the 20th century. And that's the only thing we can kind of present. But it's interesting how the perfect masters, in the execution of the divine plan, try to take some of this burden of ignorance in preparation or while the avatar actually is in birth. We've seen it with the perfect masters in Baba's time. But this, as you said, is an example of them taking how he took this on, got himself executed. What all of this means in the divine plan, God only knows. There are ramifications. There are ramifications with every action of a perfect master, and there are ramifications for every act done for or against the perfect master. But how these two brothers were in conflict, what was that? Quite an amazing thing.
I had one question, Peter, about what Baba said about the Shia, the state of the Shia Islam in Iran at this point.
Okay.
I know that Baba had said that the Mughals had made comments about the Mughals when he ran the school. And I wonder if that was related to the...
I can tell you, first of all, David, I want to say, very nice to see you after so many years.
Yeah, nice to see you too.
How are things in Michigan?
It's snowy, and the deer are looking out the window. Yesterday, I went up to the Baba hut, and I was doing my prayers, and the deer perked up its ears and listened right outside the window. So things are nice. Things are nice.
Very good to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm going to tell you, since you prompted the story, I'm going to tell you what some people a little bit shocking. It's told to me by Padre, who saw it personally. The history of Meher Ashram, Prem Ashram is an incredible story. Farshid has helped with a book concerning that. But all the little stories are quite remarkable. There was an advertising done. All people were welcome to bring their boys for free room and board for the school at Meherabad under the guidance of Meher Baba. So many people took advantage of that. It seems like some people came for free room and board. However, Baba has explained, nobody, Padre used to quote a couplet of Kabir to remind people. No one dare cross the threshold of the master without permission. So we have to remember that every one of these people who attended Baba's school were there because they had a close connection. All of them. So that being said, many of them were from specifically what's called Mughal community. It's a group of Islamic people who came into India when India was conquered, ruled by the Mughal emperors. What would happen is that there would be a current of gossip and slander in the neighborhoods of these families. And sometimes it wasn't the actual relative themselves. Aga Ali's father would say that. It's not, I've come to like you all. It's not me. But we're getting so much pressure from our community that he has to come back. We can't do this. So there are all these very poignant stories of students being taken away, and then they would escape home and find a way to walk back to Meherabad, find a way to travel back, hide, come back, starving, showing up at many, many students, not just one. And Baba at that point, sometime he made that comment, these Mughals are promise breakers. They're not keeping their words. But in 1928, it really reached a head in 1928. Baba had now begun his fast. Remember, during that time, Baba fasted for 5.5 months. Many days only on water. 5.5 months. Asfandiar said that when he came out of that fast, it was in May, he had to practice walking again to get his strength back. Baba couldn't even really move and walk properly. But this was sometime in February. Baba had been in seclusion now, also in his crypt cabin, and had begun fasting. And at a certain point, one of the boys was taken away, and his brother came and was very rough with him, slapped him in front of Baba and the Mandali on the hill, dragging him away. The boy didn't want to go. He slaps him. The Mandali had an order not to even touch these boys or speak to them unless they were ordered to. To see this guy grab one of the boys and slap him, it was a shocking thing for them to see. When he was dragged away after that, and Ali was taken, incredible stories, very poignant. Baba made the statement, you would have to do it all over again. All of that would have to be done all over again. And that's why the ashram was relocated to Toka, because of this disturbance. Baba was very upset. The work had been disturbed badly. And Padre said it was at that point when he saw Baba one day, Baba made a face like this. And he made the gesture, I will crush the spine of the Muslim world. Okay, now to put things into perspective, Baba from at least the 30s said, America will have to have its back broken. And then he revealed in 1953 at Dehradun about the coming war between Russia and America, where America would have to have its back broken. So all of these things are in preparation now. It's quite shocking. We generally, these are subjects that are sensational, and we generally stay away from them. But I'll tell you that I heard these things in chit-chatting, discussing these things with the old Mandali. These things came up. They saw so many things, and they would tell us these things. This is what they saw. It's the average person. We don't want to give them the here's the thing. If you tell 100 people things about Meher Baba and you say one thing like that, they'll forget 99 and remember that one thing. And this is why the Mandali generally, just remember these nice things. But the problem is, people were asking me, and I believe we have a responsibility in our generation to make sure that none of these things are left, and then in the future they become misconstrued. So Ward Parks and I always have this conversation. Yes, our responsibility in our generation is context. Let's make sure things are right as much as we can.